Hi, this is Bob Kay from the AMD World Championship. We're here in Sturgis 2010, and I have with me Nolski, who's just built this fine bike from Defiant Studios. Nolski, tell me something. What was the inspiration? This is just a clean, nice flowing design. How'd you come up with this? What were you thinking about?
Well, I don't really know that I was thinking about much. I just build and start seeing lines and start pulling off the lines from there. Really, everything has to start from the rolling chassis. So once I build a frame, then it's all about fitting a tank and pulling it, and sometimes the sheet metal, when you're welding it, the way it shrinks or stretches, or the way you mock something up, just might catch your eye, and having the freedom to go with what you see a lot of times works out best.
Well, let's talk about that. So your starting point was with the chassis. This is obviously not something that was purchased at the local bike shop or something. How did you come up with knowing that you had the right configuration and get these designs to flow like that? What's involved in the process of building a one-off chassis like this?
Well, I guess knowing something about building frames helps. Having built a handful before this one, knowing what stretch works really good. I've been pretty lucky with 40-degree rig. It handles really nice. I don't think I tried going more than 40. My old GP racing days, 200 rear tire, 120 front. I mean, that's been the hot cornering combination for 20 years now. And so I'm kind of stuck on that just from my days of being a Formula Superbiker. And then making room for a fender to chain to fit through without notching it, taking the kind of think that's a little bit of a shortcut when you just cut the fender out. And so, you know, you got to do a lot of math. Like, this wasn't that hard because I had already spent the time coming up with a formula, and I have a lineal jig, so if I want to put a 6-inch neck on the front or stretch the rear axle, all I have to do is move my plates apart. And so for a lot of those things, the math's already done with like your transmission offsets and all that prior to this one.
Well, that's just
I shortened this one up. This actually did start out as a client's bike that kind of didn't follow through. So it was originally made for a guy that was under 6 feet. So and this particular bike, the inspiration was to be a little bit more mainstream than some of the bikes I'd already done. So cleaner, tighter, not as maybe voluptuous or bulbous or whatever as I normally, you know, it's a little tighter and narrower.
Well, I think you've actually accomplished that very well. I kind of like the clean lines. The cherry color always does very nicely when you're going for that approach. But you've managed to have a little different shapes in your tanks and your sheet metal in general, the trim on the fender. So how did that evolve, getting that shape to fit right in there? Was it totally a matter of function, or was there a little thought to the form you were trying to achieve?
Well, to me, everything's got to fit tight first. I don't know. I like sexy things, and my style, no matter if it's working on a sport bike and just paint and graphics, I've always been about pulling the bike's going one direction, and to me it's about just pulling the line and flowing. And I feel that I'm fortunate enough to have when I get an angle on a line right, and if you're a musician and you hit that right guitar note, my brain, of course I can't carry a tune, but my brain, if once a piece of sheet metal's right or a color's right or something like that, I get a feeling that lets me know that's where I'm at. So.
Well, you certainly can sing with sheet metal. There's no question about that, brother.
It's art, so it's all, I don't know what the color of the sky is in your world, but it's all subjective, and so thank you, I guess.
Well, let's talk about the power plant. Obviously, that's the heart of any bike, including these fine customs we're seeing in the freestyle class. What do we have here for a power plant, and why did you choose that?
93 high compression S&S shovel head replica. Love S&S. They make a killer product, and for some reason, I love the shovel heads. I ride a 65-pound shovel for my daily rider, kicker only.
I don't think you'll find any arguments here. You know, myself, I've always been a fan of gooseneck pipes, but you got a nice little extra flare on it. What did it take to get that gooseneck out and then flare that back?
I got a little gooseneck. That's probably the hardest part, is getting a little bit of the curve. You know what? As far as if it comes to making something, I'd rather have it be a curve than a straight. And it probably takes 2 or 3 times more time to make something have just a little bit of a curve on it than to be straight. But to me, you know, that's what I just prefer to do. So,
well, you certainly have that down. Everything is just absolute perfection here. What about your tires and wheels? What do you got going on there?
So far, the best I've found for riding on the streets are Metzler's, these 880s. I like them. They don't grow. I got that fender so close that the nubs bend over. I've had this thing 100 miles an hour. It doesn't grow and score the paint on it. And I haven't had any rocks carved through it yet. So I always try to, everything gets so tight. Like, even if when you're building something, you leave an extra 1/4 inch, and by the time you're done with paint, there wasn't even you're minus maybe a 64th, and you're, thank God I left a 1/4 inch. And then hopefully next time you'll try to cheat it a little bit more, because everything always comes out a little too tight. It seems to work out that way.
Well, that is what makes the difference at the AMD World Championship, is just how tight and pulling everything right down to the final limits. You know, this bike I'm sure didn't happen overnight. What kind of total time did you have in putting this execution together?
I got a good 800 hours into building the frame, building the exhaust, hand pounding the stainless steel oil tank with that blown glass percolator return cap. The paint was about a month's process, working 6 hours at a time, maybe sleeping 3 hours as a rotating schedule. I got Kosmosky gave me a Meridium flake, never been released before by Valspar, so nobody has this. It's a 35 micron 3-dimensional flake with every color in the rainbow in it, and it was beautiful. You can't see it in this light, but it fires every color there is. And I ghosted it out in a raspberry candy, so I ended up putting 18 coats of candy with the flake, 15 coats of clear, 8 more coats of the raspberry with the flake in it, and then finishing it up with the rest of the gallon of clear. If you hold a light on that tank right, it looks like it's 2 inches deep. So,
well, you know, I can tell that absolute flawless execution. We really appreciate, this is the type of example of just dedication we like to see at the AMD World Championship. I know it's busy here at Sturgis. Really appreciate you taking the time for this interview so you can share some of your hard work and effort into this.
thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Shelby, and you're watching the AMD World Championship of Custom Bike Building vidcast. We're sponsored in part by Flathead Power by S&S, Motorcycle Storehouse, Arlen Ness.